video is the response from modern philosophy to the AI consciousness question. And it can be extrapolated into these other areas about human consciousness and free will and religion, God, things like that. But specifically today, AI consciousness, what do these philosophers have to say about it? I'm going to tell you the 4 refutations of the AI consciousness theory, which seems to be now ingrained already in the scientific language game, which means people take it for granted. We can't really go back to older philosophers for this one, even early 20th century, Russell, people like that. We can't go back because there's no AI. Today, we're talking specifically about how people like Chalmers, Bloch, Dennett, and Chomsky responded to this idea that AI is capable of human consciousness and what that human consciousness looks like. The number 1 refutation from modern philosophy is the biological theory, and that is that if we compare man-made things to nature, we're comparing apples to oranges. The robots are essentially electronic components and humans are living tissue. Those 2 things don't have enough in common for one to become the other, which means an AI robot can never simulate what neurons and actual organic processes do in terms of consciousness, whatever it is. And so there's a huge disparity between man-made electronic components and life. And that difference makes it impossible to even think about, let alone prove that AI can become conscious in the sense that it one day becomes like a human, is what they like to say. Number 2, the structure of language is too complex. So it's been stated by some of these philosophers that language itself is really what we're talking about. And if you look at AI, how they market it, how they advertise it, what they're talking about, it really is language systems. And that means that these robots are capable of expressing the information that they memorize. And so that expression is what we would take then as the sign of any kind of consciousness when we try to evaluate it. And in this sense, language is too complex inherently, that we're not just talking about words, we're actually talking about the whole infrastructure of language, this thing that we argue about, but that is seemingly inherently built into humans. And if you want to say it's built in a very rudimentary way and you learn it, or if you want to say it's completely built in like Thomas Reid believed, which is to mean we have the infrastructure ready to go when we're born and we start to activate that, what he called scaffolding, that language system. But that whole thing is way too complicated and way too misunderstood and alien, especially in a science sense, for us to imagine a robot being capable of it. And so again, that disparity between real, natural human language and the kind of language systems that we're developing just to deal with raw data are so different that they can't be talked about in that way. Number 3, there's no independent goals for the robots, which means they don't actually have an investment in the outcome of the AI technology. If there's a very specific question, that answer is not really what they want, it's what the human wants. So the humans infuse the robots consistently with their own goal orientation, which is what humans do. They want things. The robots themselves don't have that free will or agency. And so the robots don't really have that investment. And that investment is a huge difference between what humans do when they are conscious, whatever that is, relative to what robots are doing. And the 4th and last one is that robots don't have an actual lived experience. Human beings have a very different experience than what robots have. It may even be difficult to say that the robots have experience. That may be even a misuse of words. And so again, a huge difference here between what we would call experience and gathering life data, not just programmed data from their human inventors. Robots don't go around having that same experience. And when you think about the philosophy relative to the human experience, a lot of this comes from things like the perception arguments and the ideas about perception. And robots don't do any of that stuff. They don't do any of the things we do because they don't have that organic infrastructure that allows for the kind of perception we have through experience. So again, a huge disparity between what the human experience is in terms of perception and experience and the breadth and complexity of that experience relative to the robots. So those 4 things are the first 4 challenges to the idea that they are conscious or that they could ever become conscious. And that's what these philosophers have said. They have said they are not very likely or they never will. Most of them agree, certainly, they are not right now. And so that's the way discussion goes. I'm not saying I agree with these. I'm not saying these would be my arguments. I would prefer to laugh at it. But those are the four largest identifiable modern philosophy refutations of the AI consciousness argument. Thanks for not being conscious.